Hey there, Mikhail here with Toasty DIY, and today I'm doing a video over some tips and tricks for doing voices in your D&D game, and we're going to start with tip number one, which is not everybody can do voices. So I have a player in my party who has been with me for years, and he struggles to do voices, and I always messed with him about it. I always said he could do it, he just didn't try hard enough. And then one day we're at a party, and one of my friend's fiancés is a speech pathologist, and I asked her, like, can you diagnose my friend and tell him that he can do voices? Because I know he can. I know he can. And she met him and talked to him and actually explained why his vocal cords and why he's having difficulties doing them, and saying that with a lot of practice he probably could, but naturally he's not prone to being able to do any sort of voices, which surprised me. So just know that some players without a very intense effort cannot do voices, and when you're playing once a week or once a month, it's not worth that effort for them to learn how to do just a voice for your game. So you might need to let them go, but they can always do tip number two, which is adopt a posture. So if you've got a character who's nervous or they can't really do a voice, have them maybe do this, like an anxiety thing. And if they do this, then that's going to change a little bit how they talk, because they're going to be focusing on moving their hands, that they might pause between ideas. Who knows? They might kind of do this. But regardless, if they're doing this, we know they're in character, versus when they're normally sitting there and they're like, hey, I think we should kill this guy, versus maybe we should kill this guy. No voice, but definitely two different people when you're at the table. If you get, kind of barrel chested and you really push out your front, you're going to adopt a more heavy and powerful voice than you will. If you kind of curl yourself over, you're going to get a softer voice because you're constricting and opening airways. So just know that if you can't do a voice, do a posture. And if you add that to tip number three, which is do an accent, which anyone who listens to any sort of media that's not your own native language, parrot them every so often and try to see if you can't make that sound. For instance, if the best you can do is the I'm walking here, and you want to just take that voice and keep rolling with it, it doesn't matter. That voice, can fit whatever race you want to be that kind of voice, or whatever character you think has that voice, if it's unique to that. Because when I say races, you've got like Dwarven people almost always do like a Scottish accent. They go low and they're like, why did you enter my home? Things like that. You can go Dwarven and do Scottish all the time, and that way people know who they're talking to. Or you can change it up and, make them Australian. If you want to make them, talk with a little bit of an accent from the Australian side, you can do that. You can go to like the proper British if you think that they'd rather be more eloquent. A lot of Matt Mercer's kind and sweet characters of a sort of nature like that. You can really do whatever voice you want. Just find voices you can do. Don't worry if it's a proper accent. Don't get hung up on, I can't do an Italian accent. If the best you can do for the Italian or the French is to do something like this, then do what you can. Do not try to lower yourself or your standards. Just do what makes you happy and that you can do if you want to do a voice at all. But it's up to you what voice you think is really going to be best. If they're going to be barrel-chested, very loud or slow, or whatever voice you want, just pick something. Just find something you can do, pick a posture, and start doing it. The more you do it, the more voices will come to you. So to example this, I'm just going to try to load up an NPC generator, and we're going to play a game where I'm going to load up there. I'm just going to talk a couple lines in their voice and then tell you why I decided, and then how I make that voice as best as I can explain to somebody who just does it for fun. All right, so I've got this generator over here. It's going to generate a little bit of art and all that. So I'm going to generate a character. So we got Timber Mountain Tree, cool looking character. Whenever I see the people like this, I always think Khajiit from Skyrim. So I always have them talk a little bit, Khajiit has wares if you have coin. I saw him sneaking through the mountain pass, and occasionally I might do this if I want to sell that he's a cat, he constantly, I saw them the other day. They were wandering through the woods. I'm not sure where they were headed, but didn't really bother me. Something like that. And you can have your character. You can generate character again and have a big ogre named Megd. Whatever. I always go for low voices like this with my characters like that. I think they're just fun. Or I might go slower and add it in. As far as the voices go, if you've ever been in theater, if you've ever done like lips, teeth, tip of the tongue, it's like a exercise to figure out, like, you can talk from your lips. A lot of the words coming out when you say lips, you're talking a lot with your lips. When you say teeth, you're talking with the teeth. And then tip of the tongue is all on the tip of the tongue. So know that you can really change up where you're talking from. And for almost every larger oafish character, you're talking as far back in your throat as you can get. You can kind of move it. So we've got it coming all right here. It's where it feels like the sound's coming from. We can move it to maybe top of the throat,
and then further down, the further we want to get. So now it's more down here. You'll feel this vibrating much more as you bring it back up.
You can feel it come to the front of your mouth if you want to talk right here at the very tip. So however you want, try to move it around. When you've got female characters, for me, I almost always kind of lift my shoulders and then try to stretch my neck a little bit because women have a lighter voice than men typically. So a lot of my women just talk with this sort of falsetto kind of going towards the top because I can't do it otherwise. And they're more airy with their words than a guy would be. A guy would say things with more terse kind of hitting. Women tend to be a little bit more airy in their things. That speech pathologist I talked to, she does a lot of help with people that are transitioning between genders, want to change their voice. So I was asking her, like, oh, how can I speak like a girl? Like, if I could get a really good girl voice for my game, it'd be cool to be able to just easily make it identifiable through sound that it's a female character they're hearing, especially like listening through a wall. But for my players, they've grown to know that if I talk with more of an airy sort of a drop at the end of my words, then they know it's a woman character. Even if she's more angry and whatnot, then they still get that kind of air in their voice, more elegant than most of my male characters. And then for anybody that's like classic human like this, where I just think, oh, human voice, pick any sort of accent you want. For this guy, I'd probably go Scottish because he's got kind of a kilt on. So you can make it kind of a Scottish, like, dial the knob up to like 20% Scottish, not very much, but I'm going to take some words and I'm going to add a little bit of an affectation to them that wasn't present before I started talking as a mock. However you want to do it, but you've got to pick something, a voice for each character. For him, I might, have my hand here to show where his ferret is at all times, what he's doing. Or I might pause between things and say where his ferret goes. They know he's still talking. That says halfling, but that really gives me centaur looks. Like, it looks like she's got a saddle right there, which is really confusing me. But for halflings, a lot of times I just try to shorten myself. I go a little bit more nasally for my halflings, my gnomes. I just find that more fun. It makes it a little bit easier to keep them in track. Everybody's got a different opinion on how different races would sound. But for my halflings and I'm Miria Brushgather. It's nice to meet you, pleasure. And, I always do, like, when they move, kind of stunt myself a little bit, that it fits better. And then lastly, we'll just do this guy, Earth Genasi. For him, I bet he'd be more barrel-chested. He looks really strong. But, have the option maybe to go a little bit more. He kind of talks a little weird, but maybe a little bit more forward in the mouth. So maybe he's more like this than when I normally would give that to somebody back here. I'll instead move it forward and then talk with maybe a little bit more faster when I get to it instead of being as slow as the oaf. The oaf is kind of hard to talk with. So I'll move it forward and talk a little faster. But I'm Shavra Melt Pravada. I'm a druid. If you need anything, let me know. Moving the mouth, you'll see I kind of talk like this sometimes. I just find that moving it positionally helps. Anything you do, you'll learn more the more you pair it and do stuff. But in the end, you really just got to look at the character, think how they sound. A good one for kobolds, goblins, whatnot. I always have them. If you ever can do that noise, you can kind of talk like that for any of them. I find that works best. And the let's see who's one. Yeah, so you got an idea. If you can talk like kind of top back of the throat, kind of like feels like it's pushing this way. Hello. Then you can get a lot of like, I'm the kobold. Yeah. Things like that, which I really like to do for goblins are talking down here and kobolds talk down here. Things like that. I like adding noises between them. I think that's really fun. Every sound effect I can add, if they break a bone, things like that. I love doing that. But kobolds are some of the most fun to play because they always talk like this. I'm the moss collector. No. Things like that. It can be difficult when you have two characters talking, so time for a little bonus tip. If you've now got character voices that you like doing and you've added a posture, you've added an accent, you've done all you can to create the best thing you can, and then you realize, oh no, I'm going to have two NPCs in the same room discussing something, or worse, arguing, where they have to cut each other off, and you're going to need to switch between characters. I've got a recommended thing to do for that, which is one of two things. One, if you've prepared this, write out your argument. Makes it a lot easier, and then include these transitional lines like, and then she yells at him, why are you never there? Yells that, and then you could say, you see he's taken aback, he takes a step forward and then points a finger at her and says, no, you. I always will switch sides. So when he's talking and then she's talking, and the transitional lines let me know that I need to move over here. And so physically, my body is better at remembering when I'm looking this way, I should be doing this accent. When I'm over here, I should be doing this accent. So know that moving yourself left and right will help the players follow along. If you have more characters than that, I suggest trying to write it out. Sometimes it'll happen, but otherwise, have the argument come in at the maybe very end. So that way you can avoid doing 2 people. But doing 2 people is probably one of the harder things I have to do as DM. And I fail at keeping the voices up a lot of times when I do that. But it's very much dramatic to have NPCs argue and bicker and talk. So it's a necessary evil for me. I have to learn to do it at some point. And moving left and right or pre-writing it out with transitional lines helps me a lot. I'll even practice some speeches before I give them if I really think they're going to be fun. Well, that's been a long video over how to do voices in D&D. I don't know how useful it will be to you, but I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments down below. I make a video over any topic that you all find interesting. If you let me know what that is you want to know, anything you want to homebrew, or you want to know how to stat something unique or do anything like that, let me know. I do love your suggestions, and I'll get to it as fast as I can, most likely being every Monday that I post a video. You all take care. Have a wonderful week. Peace.